Hello, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channels. It's called McDuff Lives 1, McDuff Lives 3, and at Facebook, it's just plain McDuff. And thanks for joining us. Well, tonight it's a great pleasure for me to welcome back Peter Duke. Peter is one of the original Ospreys. The first Osprey gathering happened exactly 3 years ago in Annapolis, Maryland, and we had a whole lot of fun adventures. Peter did some fantastic photography, and it was a great kickoff to Screaming Ospreys, which has just grown and grown and grown since then. So it's a thrill to get back together again on the anniversary of our first venture together, Peter. And welcome. How are you tonight?
Well, thanks for having me, John. Yeah, it's terrific. Boy, it was hot those days, wasn't it? I just remember we went out to the Russian retreat on that boat,
Yeah.
and it was a challenge to all of our our fortitude.
Yes. Well, I think we survived pretty
Yeah,
well, and we had a great dinner afterwards. Lots of fun entertainment. The great Tara Starr entertained us with a song, if you remember.
indeed.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's say hello to Sergeant Stadenko, who is taking over the chat room apparently, and hello to Mark Husatonic and Leslie. David Underdown is here, and wow, what a bunch of great people in the chat room. Thank you for the nice compliment, Mike Panzer and Corky. And yeah, Peter Duke, I think you're a great American too. What do you think it means to be a great American today?
Well, that's a trick question, John. No, I
That's
don't.
okay. I don't mind being a little tricky with you. You're not an unsophisticated first timer here.
That's okay. I can roll with it. Well, I think that Bill Whittle was the first person that I ever heard say this, but he said that real American values are don't. I'm trying to remember what the two are. One is don't take my stuff. What, wait, I'm looking at producer Carrie as a leave me alone and don't take my stuff. It's kind of that's
Yeah.
where those are kind of like the basic American values, and Matthew Ehret does a really good job in his books that I've been reading lately on the clash of two Americas, and he talks about something called the Abraham Lincoln, what he called the American system. And Abraham Lincoln said that to be an American is to find the balance between the general welfare and liberty, and somewhere in between there is the American system. And it seems like the oligarchs that are taking over the world right now aren't really interested in that liberty thing because it disrupts their plans, their planning, and their ability to get things done. So you've got, in Ehret's frame, you've got a clash between people who believe that being an American is a balance between liberty and general welfare, and then you have totalitarians that call themselves Americans.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to check his stuff out. I've seen him a few times on some videos, and I know his work resonates pretty much with what I study with the Schiller Institute and the LaRouche organization. I think they have common sources.
Well, yeah, yeah, he quotes the Schiller Institute quite a bit in his work.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's interesting though because he's Canadian, and it's hard to look at his work and without thinking, are you working for the Chinese or are you working for the Russians? Because he he kind of has this he has this frame which is interesting that he quotes from the Schiller Institute about Abraham Lincoln was in touch with the Tsar. And in fact, a lot of people don't know that the Tsar sent a fleet to San Francisco and to New York Harbor at the beginning of the Civil War to kind of let the British know that if they were going to directly support the South, that they were going to have an issue with the Russians.
Yeah,
And
it was in anticipating a blockade. It
yeah,
was you're not going to get away with it.
and Ehret's conceit is that the country of Canada was basically created as a block between connecting Russia directly to the United States through a transcontinental highway that would run through British Columbia and Alaska and then cross the Bering Strait. So to extend the Trans-Siberian Railroad. And he shows this map from the Schiller Institute that basically has the Bering Strait. You know, normally when we look at a map of the Earth, either it's American centric, where you've got North America in the middle of the map, and you have the rest of the globe kind of going around the edges, or it's kind of Eurocentric. And he has this map where the center of the map, I think it's called a Mercator projection, is actually the Bering Strait. And he's got this, it's from the Schiller Institute, and they've got this railroad that basically connects Eurasia and North America and South America together all by rail.
That's their Belt and Road project.
Right. At which point, when you look at the map, Great Britain is this little dot that's on the far left side of the map. And it's interesting when you look at the map, because they say geography is kind of destiny, right? That if you look at the world in this very kind of land-centric way, if you could connect all of the continents together with railroads, then the control of oceans starts to be less important.
Very much so, and that's the heart of British foreign policy for the past 300 years, is to control the oceans and don't let the land bridges happen. So that's the big fight over the Belt and Road today. Is Europe going to be able to do business with Asia without going around, the Cape of Good Hope and in ships? Is there a land way to do it? And that's the big question. And if Britain knows, if it happens, then that's going to sink their little empire.
Yeah, and you have to think whether or not, like, demonizing Russia right now is just kind of like it's like the Eurasian version of creating Canada as a bloc. If you're just like looking at the map as a game board, right? That if you take Russia out, you can't really have this railroad that runs from Paris to New York.
Well, the British foreign policy has been trying to destroy the Russian government, whether it's the Tsar or the I'm not the Tsar, but whether it's the communists or Putin, they want control over the resources.
Yep.
Because that's the key is the vast resources of the Soviet Union have just untold and unknown wealth that's there, and all the British capital wants to do is get a hold of it and get the local government out of the way, and that's where we come in. We're the Osiris, we're the army, we're the guys that are going to go out and do it for them. So, it's not just fighting to the last Ukrainian. It's also us. We're
next.
Yeah, we are committed, and that, if I may, just how that ties into what I've been studying myself. You know how I like big, thick books, right? Look at this one.
Which one is that? MI6?
MI6 by Stephen Dorrell.
Okay.
And it's 50 years of special operations. And
I have this thick book. I have Tragedy and Hope.
Oh, so. Yeah. Well, that's another real good doorstop, isn't it? But this guy, I just got it, and I'm digging in to a couple of subjects. One of them is the stay behind. The collaborationist armies, the Ukrainian with the Bandera and the Azov and Lebed and all of them, were really begun by British intelligence. They're not indigenous; they're British intelligence things that have existed since before World War II. And they kind of got turned over to the Americans in the Cold War, and the CIA has been running them as kind of a proxy of an army, really a guerrilla army against the Soviet Union and now against Russia, the Russian Federation.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the British stopped being in control, though. But I think that, this is just, again, this is my hypothesis, is that what wound up happening is that the British thought, well, the Americans are willing to go in and do all the heavy lifting, as George would say, or that, and the Americans are willing to be the hands and feet. If we work on the banking and all of the money laundries and all of the how you finance all this stuff, then the Americans will send in all of the hardware and forces to take care of things.
Well, yeah, and the other thing that I learned here was that actually Britain didn't really have the money to finance these operations, and the Americans did. So it kind of was inevitable that the CIA would take over handling the operations in as the 50s progressed. But yeah, but it's like we talk about with Spectre and James Bond. It's like the Five Eyes are working together. MI6 and the CIA are working together, whether that's sometimes is even against their own governments, because they have their own constituents, their own clients that they work for, like Sullivan and Cromwell, for instance.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. And I guess as I'm listening to you say that, the question that kind of pops into my head, what is, well, yeah, Great Britain might have been broke, but I'm not sure that the city of London was. And
Yeah, no.
we like to think of them as kind of like a homogeneous thing, but I'm not sure that I do think of them that way anymore. And in fact, I woke up a couple of days ago with this thought that it seems like the cabal that runs the world hides in this infrastructure of sovereign entities. That is, the City of London is sovereign from Great Britain. The Vatican is sovereign from Italy. Uh, uh, Basel, Switzerland, is sovereign from Switzerland. CERN is sovereign from France and France and Switzerland. Um, it seems like the United Nations in Manhattan is sovereign. They don't abide by the rules of the host country that they have their little entities in. And it seemed to me that if we really wanted to try to figure out a way to be free, what the people could do, because apparently individual Americans are not sovereign either. We are only sovereign in as a group, as the people. The people are sovereign. And if the people decided that they didn't want to support these treaties with these non-government sovereign entities, that there might be some kind of a solution there. I don't know. You're the lawyer. You tell me.
Well, it's all about education, and what you said is right. It just the people don't understand that they're losing everything. They're losing their liberty. And yeah, no, I do believe we all have individual rights, and I think that, as Jefferson says, they are inalienable and bestowed upon us by our Creator. And so, in my view, it's not just a collective freedom; it's an individual freedom as well. And like as you said at the beginning of the show, just leave me alone, don't take my stuff,
Right.
and we'll be fine. Good fences make good neighbors, as Robert Frost said, and that is kind of a traditional American view. And then contrasting with it, as you say, with Matthew Ehret's comments, is that what he sees as a totalitarian oligarchy is the New England slash California, the creepy wealth, the wasps that got rich running opium and slaves and whatever the traffic will bear, and over hundreds of years, and running the insurance companies that allowed it all to happen, which is another deep story to get into, because of the monopoly that comes along with having enough capital to run the insurance game for all of the ships on the seas. And Britain has all the ships on the seas, and they're doing everything. I mean, whoever's at the top of that pyramid is really raking it in. And that's where you get a Sinclair and others that now have huge wealth in Canada and here in the United States and all around the world, just that old money just, as I think it was Einstein said that the greatest power in the world is compound interest.
Yeah, exactly. The is it the Euler constant, Euler macaroni? I don't remember which one it is.
But
Yeah,
getting that old money and having the sense on the one hand that you are entitled to it because you are who you are, that you've got this noble blood, or because you are part of the British Empire, which is has bears the white man's burden, and it's so, so we have to lead. We are the only, we're the chosen ones. Or if you are a Catholic or a Pope or something, and you feel like, God has appointed me to run the world, or a Holy Roman Emperor, or anybody that thinks that they are a divine right ruler, and we still have people that think that way, and these
and they're acting on it.
yeah,
Yeah,
they are, and so they're uh, all of it is held up like a house of cards that's hidden behind smoke and mirrors and curtains, and but it really is a small, relatively small amount of people that work together. uh, as George Carlin said, it's a big club, but and we're not in it, and
exactly.
we're not in it. We are expendable. We are the serfs of the 21st century.
Yeah, it's interesting you were mentioning insurance companies too, because I think that in A Man Called Intrepid, the book about William Stevenson, there's kind of a throwaway line in that book that, every once in a while you're reading a book and you just read something and you just have to put the book down and think about it. You have to go take a walk or something. And he
Mhm.
was talking about how MI6 had people in all of the insurance companies around the world, because the insurance business, beyond the kind of you know you could say what you want about insurance companies, but the point that he made was that it's basically a fear index. Like, if you understand what the things are that people feel important enough to insure, then you know what the things are that people are afraid of losing. And like I said, I think it's one sentence in that book. It's like a throwaway line, and he doesn't even say it. He doesn't even follow up on that. But I was just thinking, of course it is. Of course it's a fear index. Of course that what they said is that they wanted to see what the most important targets were to bomb in Germany. Now, you can also factor in the fact that we weren't bombing factories that had substantial holdings by the Rockefellers or J.P. Morgan. But that aside, they were determining which things the Germans were the most afraid of losing by how much insurance they were buying on those things. And I thought, well, yeah, that's probably what everybody does, right? That's probably what every intelligence agency does. They're probably always, and in fact, you know, even if insurance companies are running at a near zero profit, the amount of intelligence that you can get out of insurance companies is probably worth a lot. Worth a lot.
Well, yeah, and then there's the issue of transportation, of what is somebody sending from here to there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to be insured.
Right.
And so okay, there's 27 identical cartridges going, from Panama to Berlin, on a steamer, and you say, what could that be? And you look at the insurance and it says, oh, they've insured it for so and so. Okay, that means there's probably exactly 47 howitzers in these crates, and
Right.
figure it out from there. But anyway, that whole insurance game is it's out of control at this point, and I'm afraid that those of us that perceive a eugenical motive in our recent uh, uh, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of like, are they kind of cutting down on their extended health insurance risks, and just helping helping people out the door a little early to make sure that their system doesn't crash, or just callously to beat the odds. Uh, we bet that so many people would live to would die before they're 70, but it looks like there's a whole lot more than we thought. So let's kind of change the odds. Let's tilt the table.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, I, w- I lost my thought. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
well,
Um,
that's okay. I will then ask you to tell me a little bit more about what you've been working on since we talked about Flight 800. I understand you gotten interested in interviewing with Mr. Teely,
I
or Teal. I'm sorry if I can pronounce it correctly, but tell us what as folks know. I read the account, the first chapter of the downing of TWA Flight 800 by James Sanders on my show the other night,
mhm.
and Bill Taylor, who will be my guest, I think next Monday, was also digging into it as a result of recently finding a video by Mr. Teal, who appears to have been involved in, at least was on one of the boats or ships. Tell us more.
Well, I spent 5 hours with him yesterday. I saw the tweet by Bill Taylor earlier this week, and I thought, I was in the middle of like the internet. The internet was taking off in '96. I don't know if everybody remembers, but the World Wide Web was born in 1993, and I had been working at News Corps, and I think I just finished working at Fox, and I had started working on something called the Hollywood Stock Exchange with Max Kaiser and Michael Burns when that happened, and so I wasn't really. I wasn't paying a lot of attention. I knew that it was a terrible thing and it sounded like really bad, but I hadn't. That was right about the time when I had stopped watching television, so I wasn't that familiar with it. But when I saw the video from Bill Taylor, I thought, well, I did what I normally do, which is I went and I tried to find the guy, and it took me about 5 minutes to figure out that he lived 40 minutes from me.
Hmm.
And I DM'd him, and he responded. And I asked him if he'd do an interview, and he said sure. So I Ubered him up to my house, and we spent about 5 hours together yesterday. And not unlike my working with some of the other people that I work with, I tried to, kind of put a box around his story so that people would. Are, John is gone. Am I still streaming? If somebody in the
Screen
chat
good.
could tell me. Oh, there he is. All
I'm
right.
back.
All right. So I tried to put a box around his story because he is a little spectrumy, meaning when he starts to talk about uh, the 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 events and stuff, he was definitely in the military, and he uses all of this military jargon. And one of the problems that people have when they're trying to get a story out is that you can't assume that everybody who you're talking to understands the jargon, right? So you have to kind of like boil it down. So if I might, I'll just read you a script that I'm about to post after we get done with our podcast tonight. I have about an hour and a half of video on him. Stu Peters, my friend Stu Peters, did an interview with him that got posted about an hour ago, and you can go look at that. But there's more. There's more to come. There's more information. So here's a little. It'll take me about 2 minutes, I think, to get through this. On July 17th, 1996, TWA 800 was blown out of the sky shortly after taking off from John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. 230 people died in the crash. Investigators and journalists have covered the event, and the official cover story is that an electrical failure in the 747 caused the fuel tanks to explode. The United States Navy was running a training exercise off Long Island at the time, testing the Lockheed Martin Spy 1A radar system on the frigate USS Carr under the command of Keith L. Ray. The Carr was part of a battle group testing a system that allowed one ship, the Carr, to track a target drone while another ship fired a missile. No actual missiles were to be fired in the exercise. Instead, only dummy missiles that could not be fired were to be loaded. The U.S. Navy, by policy, only fires missiles in specific areas, test ranges. One eyewitness, operations specialist William H. Teal III, was in the command center of the USS Carr when the incident occurred, but was ordered to remain silent. Teal was in the best position to observe the incident as a trainee under instruction for the Air Coordinator Console in the Combat Information Center. So he was in there and he was being trained. Teal sat between the tracking supervisor, operations specialist Brian Miller, in charge of radar identification, and air controller operations specialist Patrick Kelly. So one of them was tracking surface ships and the other one was tracking aircraft. Around the corner from the CIC sat Radioman Second Class Cummings, who was the watch supervisor of Radio Central Communications Center. So on one side of Teal was the guy who was watching the airplanes. On the other guy was the guy who was watching the ships. And right behind him was the guy who was in charge of communications for the entire flotilla. So he was literally, figuratively, whatever way you want to look at it, right in the middle of the action. What Teal describes is what was supposed to be a routine training exercise. They expected a, quote, low, slow flyer when TWA entered their radar screens in what they call a hot box. The USS Carr's Spy 1A radar system got a lock and fed the information to the other ship many miles away, like 40 or 50 miles away, which fired 2 missiles. Only they were not supposed to be actual missiles. They were in a training exercise. There was no one who thought that this exercise, there was no one on the car who thought that this exercise meant that there was actually a missile that was going to be shot. Teal describes the immediate confusion in the CIC as Miller, Kelly, Cummings, and Teal begin to consider the implications of the United States Navy shooting down an airliner. Teal was ordered to remain silent about the events surrounding TWA 800, but the stress of keeping secret for years haunts him. In addition, he had an unusually close relationship with Captain Ray and stayed in contact with him until Ray's death. So Ray is dead. In fact, a lot of the players in this scenario are dead. Finally, on July 17, 2015, Teal could not hold back anymore, and after talking to 2 journalists and the parent of one of the victims, he posted a video on YouTube trying to describe what he knows. The video only got a few hundred views until it was discovered by Bill Taylor of D State News on July 17, 2022, and now Teal wants to tell the whole story. So I spent quite a bit of time with him yesterday. I've got an hour and 15 minutes of video on him, and he, goes through the blow-by-blow description of what happened when he was sitting there on the bridge, and then the aftermath of it. He talks about how as soon as they figured out, immediately after they figured out that they shot down an airliner, they went on radio silence, meaning that they they cut off all radio communication. And then a private communication network was set up between the captain of the ship that fired the missile and Captain Ray, and they had a short discussion. After that discussion, the 2 ships made all max speed, doing high-speed evasive maneuvers, meaning like they were trying to avoid submarines or something, zigzagging to Bermuda. They spent about 4 hours in Bermuda, where Teal was ordered to collect all of the records of the events, so all of the electronic logs, all of the written logs, everything, put them in a box, sign his name to the box. And after he had done that, he was ordered to leave the CIC, and he went out to the front of the ship to have a smoke, at which point he saw the guys in the polo shirts show up. They went up to the CIC. They were there for a few minutes. They turned around, they got off the ship, and as soon as they got off the ship, then the car and the other ship sped off into the Atlantic. One of the things that Teal mentioned when I was interviewing him is that when they were navigating to Bermuda, they were navigating by compass. They were not. They had all of their electronics turned off, so the ship was in a stealth mode. And when Teal asked them about that, they said, "Well, because of the Bermuda Triangle, there's all kinds of navigation problems here, so we'd rather just use the compass than the electronic devices." But I asked Teal, I said, "Well, does that mean if they were navigating using their compass, does that mean that they were basically invisible to the rest of the world?" And he said, "Yes, that's the case." So that's the story that he tells, and he talks about how Captain Ray had a party for them in, I think, in Sicily, because they didn't stick around. They kind of went on a tour at that point. And Captain Ray was Teal got approved because of some urging by Captain Ray to become a swimmer, a rescue swimmer, search and rescue swimmer. And he went off to search and rescue training. And when he came back to the car after he had his search and rescue training, Ray was gone. He had been relieved and sent to the Naval War College. And he was told that the Pentagon wanted to keep Ray close. So that was the words that he used. And I thought that was very interesting because one of the things that Bill Taylor found this afternoon, if I can bring it up here quickly, he found a paper that was written by Ray when he was at the Naval War College, and he, let me get to my assets, and it is called, it's a very interesting title. It's called Two Hands on the Sword, a study of political military relations in national security policy, which I find a curious title for some. If you kind of take Teal's word at face value, then it seems like that there was a giant either error or deliberate misstep that happened. And then you look at the title of the paper by Ray that he wrote in 1999, so 3 years later when he was at the Military War College. And it seems like maybe there's some more to be found in that document.
Well, what about Mr. Teal? Now, does he have any opinions about? And do you get the sense from him that he believes that it was a Navy missile, that it did come from a Navy ship, and
100%. And in fact, he talks about how a bunch of there was one of the operations specialists, a crew chief that he worked with, who continually for years after the event would complain about things that happened that changed operationally on the ship, not just on that ship, but on all ships, because some dummy put a live rocket on the rail. Some dummy turned a key. Some dummy, I can't do this because some dummy turned a key. That there was it's very kind of like I can't remember the term for deathly humor, but gallows humor. Yeah, it's very kind of gallows humor. But it seemed like this crew chief was he was venting in his own way by trying to make light of some of the operational changes that happened because some dummy did this or because some dummy did that. Now, the question is whether or not it was a dummy who did that, because what Teal points out is that there are white missiles that are live, real missiles, and then there are blue missiles that are used for testing. So in an exercise like this, typically you would have a situation where the crews on the ships, when they're getting ready to fire a missile, have to load the missile, right?
Yeah.
They're not just testing the ability to push the button; they're testing the ability to get the the missile away. But when they do these exercises, they're not using live ammunition. They're using dummy ammunition, and so the car, the people who were on the car after they handed control of basically what the car did is the car collected the radar information about TWA 800, assuming that it was a drone, passed the information to the other ship. Then the other ship took the information, used that to program their missile guidance system, and then launched the missile. Well, they weren't actually supposed to launch a missile, although
What were they supposed to do?
they were supposed to. I don't know the. I don't know the answer to the question, but they weren't supposed to launch a missile.
In Saunders' account, in James Sanders' account that I read the other night, just to clarify, what he says is that the missile that was launched was a dummy missile, and that it went through the TWA plane, but as it went through, it caused such damage that the gas tanks exploded. It wasn't an explosion that was the missile exploding. It was the gas tanks exploding because of the penetration. I'm sure at such a high speed and causing sparks and whatever. But that is a different story. If it is a live missile, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
And if they weren't supposed to fire anything, then why was there a drone? Were they?
Yeah, I mean, these are good
There's a lot of
questions.
questions.
These are good questions, and like I said, I spent a few hours with him, but I'm still, trying to get my arms around it. And we can go back and we can ask him those questions. So
Cool.
he's available. So
Yeah, and then what I think most people are interested in is was there a saboteur? If was okay, there's three possibilities. It was a dummy that screwed up, or it was a one crewman that was an agent of a foreign power, or a agent of Khomeini or something like that. In those days, this was right after Khobar Towers, by the way.
right,
So there was an atmosphere of tension already there, and the idea that it could have been a Middle Eastern terrorist shooting down an American plane right off of New York was one of the things that the Clinton people were afraid would hit the press, and they needed to quash that idea that they were so weak that their country would be vulnerable to a terrorist attack under those circumstances. And that leads to speculation that perhaps it was a political enemy that wanted to make Clinton look weak, and at some level on that ship intentionally did that, whether it was just a lone crewman or whether it was somebody higher up. It all sounds so like watching The Hunt for Red October and waiting for James Earl Jones to come over around and say, "Hey, put your hand down that button," and I was never here.
right, exactly. So yeah, so there's still more to be discovered, like you
Sure.
said. I mean, I think that I can go back and ask him the question. I think that almost, all of the information though that I got was just based on the speculation that was going on between these operations specialists in the combat information center on the car.
Hmm.
They weren't on the other ship. So
Yeah.
and they didn't get more information after that.
Yeah.
So all of the information that they have is kind of hermetically sealed in that little environment.
Yeah. And whoever was on the other ship hasn't had their, you know, road to Damascus moment yet. They haven't
Well,
seen the
they
light.
probably if you they probably have. We just haven't heard about it.
Yeah.
You know, Carr did say that his career got harder after that.
Yeah.
That when he left the car after the the TWA 800 event, he went to search and rescue school, which is the same kind of swimming training that Navy SEALs go under. And they tried to wash him out because he was black, and he was told that black swimmers, there's no black swimmers on the Olympic team.
Mm.
And he was the first black swimmer that ever qualified for search and rescue in the Navy. At least that's the way he tells the story. And then he came back to the car. When he came, like I said, when he came back to the car, Captain Ray was gone.
Mm. There's definitely a lot more to it. What are you going to do with your interview now? Are you going to be publishing that somewhere?
Yeah, I'm gonna. I shot it yesterday. I'd probably sit down and edit it this weekend, but tomorrow morning I get on a plane and I am going to the premiere of Alex's War, the biopic of Alex Jones that was directed by my friend Alex Lee Moyer, and that's in Saturday night, and then I come back on Sunday. So I'll start working on the video on Monday. I'm probably going to put a clip up, probably just a minute or two, of the video that I recorded yesterday on Twitter on the Duke Report before I go to bed tonight. But I will be editing it into a longer form video next week.
Well, the other thing I wanted to cover with you tonight, which I hope to do with you once a month or so, if we're able to get you back, is to just touch on the Duke Report and to give us, just off the top of your head, maybe, what do you think is the most important story that you have been aware of, and since we last got together, say in the last 2 or 3 weeks? Pick a story that you think is really worth us all paying a lot more attention to.
Well, it's hard. Context is an important thing, and one of the issues that I have when I'm going through the Duke Report is that, like for example, I was talking to Paul Cottrell earlier today, and Paul Cottrell is convinced at this point that the next bioweapon that's queued up and ready to go is aerosolized AIDS.
I'm sorry for laughing. I'm sorry.
That's what's so funny.
I know what's so funny. It's like, maybe it's another case of gallows humor.
Right, it's gallows humor. Right, exactly. It's like aerosol. So Paul brings the receipts. You know what I mean? He doesn't. He's not like some other quote unquote doctors that are on the internet that will use kind of hypnotic language in order to convince you that whatever it is that they're saying is correct. He draws the molecules on the whiteboard. He cites the white papers. He documents and cites everything that he's talking about. So it's hard to be dismissive of him, right? Yeah. That said, I haven't put any of. I try to put Paul's stories up a little bit higher, but I've never made him the most important story because I think that the way that he presents the information, unless you've been following him for a while, you'll start to look at him and you might either lose interest or think he's crazy, so I was talking to him today about like how do we kind of synthesize this stuff. I have similar a lot of the stories that are on the Duke Report have the same issue. That is, the people that are doing the hard work, the researchers that are out there and they're digging the stuff up and they're finding it. They're not the best people at presenting it, right? They're not the best people at putting a box. So one of the things that I do, so the pictures, the stories that you see at the Duke Report, I could argue that Paul Cottrell's story is the most important story, but I'm not sure it's going to resonate with a lot of people the way that it's presented right now. So what I try to do is I try to find what I think is the most important story that's at least packaged well enough for people to, consume it, right? A couple of stories this week. James Corbett is, he is one of, I think, the premier researchers on the internet. He's been talking about this New World Order stuff, I think, since 2009, and he does incredibly concise and deliberate videos where not only does he do a video on something, but on the web page below the video, he cites every source. There's a link to every source. Anything that looks like it might go away, he will back the information up to the web archive, so it won't go away on his website, at least theoretically. And he's started a 6-part series called The Gutenberg Conspiracy, and it's just basically a 6-part series. I've only seen the first part, where he goes over how we got into this mess, basically how media controls us. And so one of the things that I was at a screening of Alex's War a couple of days ago, and there were people that I would describe as being on the left side of the political aisle, although I don't really subscribe to the dialectic anymore. And they were kind of laughing out loud in certain parts of the movie where Alex was talking about things about the New World Order taking over the world, and I think that they thought he was out of his mind. Like, you know, their frame of reality is based on MSNBC and CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post, and they think he's out of his mind. So when I look at Corbett and what he's trying to do is that I think he's trying to bring everybody up to the same level of understanding of, like, you can't really explain that the New York Times is lying without explaining how we got there. Because there's so many people who just think that the Gray Lady is the newspaper of record, and that everything that gets printed in it must be true, that it winds up becoming very important. So I think that James Corbett's Gutenberg conspiracy, it's actually called the Media Matrix. The Gutenberg Conspiracy is the first episode. A story that InfoWars did a better job of presenting than Harry the Greek, although Harry the Greek, I think, probably posted the story earlier than InfoWars, because Alex Jones made a video out of it, is the martial law plan announced by Biden, the martial law plan that is has been passed by the House and has been sent to the Senate, that would give the president unprecedented martial law powers for unannounced emergencies. And so Alex Jones, Harry linked to the document. Alex Jones went through, each section of the bill and went through it. I think that's pretty important. We'll see if it passes the Senate. They claim that they've got the votes. Jay Dyer did a story, Illuminati billionaires creating communism. A lot of people are not familiar with the work of Anthony Sutton, and the idea that the Third Reich, the Soviet Union, and the New Deal could have all been financed by groups of people in Wall Street is not something that anybody has ever learned. And when you start to understand that there was a financial component to World War II that nobody learns in school, then it changes the way that you look at things. And Jay Dyer does a very good job of explaining that in I don't know, 40 minutes or 50 minutes. It's not very long, and so I think that's an important story. And then this kid, Schulin, I can't remember. I'd have to click on the story to get his name. The kid who got convicted for the Vault 7. Let me see the second. Matthew Russell Lee at Inner City Press has published a book that he calls Brutal Kangaroo, which basically goes through all the machinations of that trial that he considered a kangaroo court. And of course, Vault 7 is the famous WikiLeaks technology transfer. So it was CIA technology or NSA technology that got leaked through WikiLeaks out onto the internet. That, among other things, uh, had programs that would allow you to mask your identity, so that if you wanted to hack into another person's system, you could pretend, for example, that you were the Russians, um, and it would make you look like you were the Russians. Um, and then on the more salacious side, I would say Lauren Southern posted a story, a video called "The Whole Truth," where she basically goes through a kind of a tell-all history of her first 3 or 4 years as a reporter, and all of the kind of backbiting and uh, nasty stuff that went on in the dissident right with Milo Yiannopoulos and Paul Joseph Watson and Tommy. I can't remember Tommy's last. Tommy Robinson. So she kind of tells all in that, and I thought that was I was uh, personally involved in a lot of those. With a lot of those people, and so a lot of the things that she said didn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form. So I think if you want to get a kind of a balanced look at people like Milo Yiannopoulos, you might want to take a look at Lauren's video. So those are the ones that come to mind. Are there any other ones that you want to talk about, or you want to ask me questions about any of those?
Well, no, I just want everybody to be aware of them, and because I think that you are a very astute observer, I think that the story is what's Peter Duke looking at,
Well,
and that's
I'll tell you what my heuristic is. My heuristic is what do I think is the most important story today that's been packaged in a way
yeah,
that people want to consume it. And that means, kind of it's the who, what, where, when, why, how kind of journalistic rubric. But, can you make it into a story? Is there a good graphic? Do they have a good headline? I mean, uh, 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 I don't mean to sound like I'm beating up on Harry, because I think Harry does great work. Uh, but Harry, a lot of times, he's like ahead of everybody by a day, right?
hmm
I would guess that the reason he's ahead of a lot of people by a day is because other people watch what Harry puts up, and then they go take his stuff, and then they write a real story. you
yeah.
know, but he's very good. Harry's great at writing a good headline, and he's great at finding stuff, but packaging it in a way that somebody who's clicking on it understands what the context of the story is still, a work in progress. It's still something that needs to happen. And so synthesis is the drum that I always beat, and that's what I was talking to Paul Cottrell about earlier today. Same thing. Paul does great work. Paul is way ahead of everybody on a molecular level, and but we have to figure out a way to put it in a box that somebody else, or wrap it up with a bow, so that other people will go consume it.
Yeah, well, what he talks about is very, very dark and like almost leads to despair if you accept some of the things that he says, and that in of itself is a little bit, to me. I'm like, okay, if Paul's that dark about it, I'm going to back off until I hear some confirmation from somebody else. Like if it's really that bad, he might be, he might be light years ahead of the pack, but nevertheless, he's not the only runner in the field. There's other people that are going to set off the same alarm bell. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I just have, and this is just a visceral feeling that I just like, I don't want to study the details of this really, really dark theory unless I have a little more sense of, yes, Paul's a very smart guy. He obviously done an awful lot of work in this field, and can you know really go with anybody. I think Shiva's pretty good, Dr. Shiva up in Massachusetts, but
Yep.
I'm not somebody that can ever hope to follow that stuff. So I have to go almost with a sense of my own feelings. Do I feel like this is the direction that I want to spend my time studying? And in my case, I'm not. But in other people's cases, I think again, it's a matter of context. But me, I to be honest with you, I got an 800 page book here that I'm starting to conquer. It's Stephen Dorrill's MI6, 50 Years of Special Operations. And man, there is so much stuff in here that is so helpful. I'm going to be reporting on this book in the next couple weeks.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, my when I was a kid, you probably went through the same thing, but we used to have drop drills in school, you know,
Uh,
because we were going to get nuked, and
yeah.
the teacher would yell drop in the middle of a math
Oh,
lesson, and everybody was supposed to, you know, jump under their desk and put their hands behind their heads and curl up in a little ball.
yeah.
And uh, and I was talking to my dad. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I was talking to my dad about it. And my dad said, "Yeah, you should probably not worry about that." And I said, "Why not?" And he goes, "If you get hit by a nuclear bomb, you're gone. Like, forget about it." Like,
Yeah.
he goes, "Going under your desk isn't going to help you." And so,
But wear a mask.
yeah. So the thing is about Paul is that if Paul is right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they really are going to do what he's talking about,
Yeah.
uh, there's not really much to be done about it. And so worrying about it is might be counterproductive. And and that's part of the reason why, and you were kind of the inspiration for me when you were reading The Secret Team. Is that when I realized that there's books about this stuff and you can go find out what the provenance is for all of these issues that we've got right now. It gives you a framework for being able to look at the world in a way that, I used to look at George Webb and say, how does he do that? You know, and now I'm at a point right now. George is still ahead of us, but I'm catching up. You know, and I think that it's probably a lot healthier to be able to look at the world that way. But that said, I don't want to ignore Paul, and if I can help package his ideas in a more consumable way, then I want to help him do that.
Yeah, and I feel the same. And Paul's a great guy, and he's been very kind to me in talking about my work. I think he's spoken many times about my father and how interesting that story is, and I look forward to sharing more time with Paul, and also with yourself. Okay, guys, that's it for tonight. We're going to leave you with the uh, the story of the week: Illuminati billionaires created communism. And that, to me, if I had to pick one of yours, that's the one I'd say, guys, you gotta somehow sell it. This is the key to it. The key to the whole thing is to get people to realize that it's the money. Follow the money. It's the banks. They needed somebody to be a foil, to have this communist boogaboo, so that then we could then crush it, right? I mean, how can you have a war if you don't have an enemy? So let's create communism, and then we can beat up communism. Very, very simple way to put a complicated thing, but that's what I do sometimes.
Indeed.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Peter, thank you so much. And everybody, we'll see you tomorrow. I will be at 11 a.m., unusual time for this, but it will be David Underdown tomorrow morning, East Coast time, 11 a.m. And hope you can join us for that. Thanks again, Peter.
Talk to you later. Bye, Don.